Good morning, lovely people. I'm about to read a letter that was very generously offered to me by a good friend I've had for many, many years. He got in touch with me after he heard that I've been running a competition to support a woman to tell her story, and he asked me if I might be interested in reading and sharing a letter written by his grandmother to her family. It's a letter that she left with her solicitor to be given to the family after her death. She was 94 when she died in 2022, and she'd written the letter a couple of years earlier. My friend wondered if it might inspire other women to tell their important stories to families who deserve and want to know. I'm going to call this lady Joan Baxter. It was not her real name. Joan's story is far from small, and although this part of it is just a few pages of a letter, it's probably one of the most powerful indicators of who she was, because it talks about how she felt within herself in ways that women of her era weren't supposed to. She wasn't ashamed of who she was or what she did, but she didn't want her family to think less of her for having done it. Even back in 2020, just 5 years ago when she wrote her letter, she was aware that her actions as a young girl would still be open to judgment today in most circles. Being condemned by the people she adored was the one thing in life that she was scared of. It would have destroyed her if her family had turned their backs on her. My lovely friend has allowed me a rare privilege, a glimpse, if you like, at an old faded family snapshot that reveals so much more about a family matriarch than her day-to-day life ever allowed anyone to see. It gave me a look into the private thoughts of someone who had always felt like she wasn't quite right for her time, that people wouldn't understand the way she thought about her own life and wanted to live it and would judge her for it. Some might say her letter was brave. Others might say it was cowardly, but whichever way you choose to interpret it, it demonstrates how important it really is to a family that a woman's story is told. I'm profoundly grateful to my friend for trusting me with this amazing, poignant piece of his family's heritage. It's what you might call a story out of the box. It refers to the paternity of Joan's firstborn son, my friend's father, who died a good few years before she did. Joan's letter had a big impact on her family. It prompted them to wonder how much they did and didn't know about her, and it has left them with a lot more questions than it's answered. It's a brave little letter, I think, offered by a woman who couldn't face the prospect of family condemnation while she was still alive. So I hope I'll do it justice. I've kept the content of the story itself intact, as largely in Joan's own words as they are, but I have very slightly modified the narrative to make it more readable aloud. I've also changed the names, of course, to protect my friend's family, and I've put some accent into it. But my friend told me that he wants other families to know things they have every right to know, and for every woman who has something important to say, who may be afraid or who doesn't know where to start, to find the courage to tell her own stories that are so important for her family to hear. He is brave in allowing me to do this. It's a privilege I feel incredibly blessed to have, so with great respect and pleasure, I'm now going to narrate Joan Baxter's letter to her loved ones. March 28th, 2020. To my family. By the time you all read this letter, I'll be gone. It's only because I am gone that you get to read it. There are things you need to know that I was not able to look any of you in the eye and say. I was always sure you would judge me for what I told you, and I couldn't stand that because I know how much you've always loved me, and I couldn't imagine how I would live with a change and how you might feel if you knew things. I was never sure if you would feel differently towards me or even hate me for what I'm about to tell you. Your love has always meant everything to me. You're my precious family, and if any of you had loved me less after what I could have told you, I could not have borne that. I hope you understand that. It's why I never told you what you've always deserved to know. Something I never told my son Terence while he was alive. He was important in this family, and he will be a family ancestor of whoever comes after you. Some of you are his descendants, so I want you to know the truth about him. I owed him the truth about his parentage, but I never had the courage to tell him. It breaks my heart that he died not knowing the truth. I let him down over that. The only thing I can say about it is that I never thought it would do him any good to know certain things about me. But they are things I want you to know, because a few of you will be young people in the world with choices to make about how you live and what you do, like I was once. I was born in 1927, and one or two of you might remember that I was just 18 when I had Terence in 1945. He never knew his father. He asked me a few times over the years, but all I could bring myself to tell him was that he was a war baby, and his dad was an American soldier called Michael. I was honest when I told him that I never knew Michael's last name or where he'd gone, only that he'd returned to his homeland before I found out I was pregnant, and I never heard from him again. I never expected to, because we weren't serious. All of that was true, but I never told him the one thing I know I should have. I was not on my own, being young and pregnant and left in the lurch. Quite a few of us went through the same thing. The war was a frightening time, and we let ourselves be seduced by handsome young American soldiers because it gave us some excitement and something nice in a time of turmoil when a lot of our family men were away fighting and we knew a lot were not going to come home. We never knew who might get the next telegram in our street. We lived our lives in fear of those telegrams. Handsome young men were thin on the ground, so we were grateful for the attention from the Americans. It took our thoughts away from the sadness and the horror of the war that seemed like it was never going to end. But a few of us did get into trouble with those boys, and we had to bear the consequences. Some girls got lucky. They ended up in America with new lives. One or two soldiers stayed here and became settled in new lives too, with English wives and children they had not banked on having. But that was just how life was back then. Everyone just got on with it, even the girls like me who didn't get to have the respectability of a wedding or even a man who cared. I got married, of course, a few years later to Bob. He was happy to take Terence on as his own, so that made me lucky. We had Sam and Wilma together too, as you know, and I think we ended up more happy than not. All things considered, apart from being widowed when I didn't expect it, it were a good life. You are all the result of my and Bob's marriage or Terence's. You're all my lovely family, and I'm grateful for every last one of you. But the truth is that Michael may not have been Terence's father. The truth is that the night I conceived him, I was at a party in an American army barracks, and without saying too much about it, I had a bit to drink. And I know that there were at least 3 men involved that night. They were all good-looking American soldiers, and the truth is that Terence could have belonged to any one of them. Please, please don't misunderstand me. I was a willing participant. I was not coerced or taken advantage of. They were considerate boys, and I do remember that they kept asking me if I was sure. And the truth is I really did want to sleep with them all. It felt like an adventure. It felt exotic and illicit. We were expected to be such good girls. I was sick of it. I wanted to have some fun, and I enjoyed the sex with all of them. I always enjoyed sex all my life. I started out being curious, then very willing when I understood how free it made me feel. That bit of freedom meant everything to me at a time when we were all supposed to be straight-laced and pure in thoughts and bodies and saving ourselves for a husband that would one day show up expecting it. But I was never that girl. I never saw myself as a slut, but I was a bit wild, I suppose, and I was not a bit sorry about being curious about sex or wanting it or enjoying it. I did, all my life, right up until Bob died. I never had sex again after that, and I've always missed it terribly. I still think about it more than you might imagine. And I was never sorry about the way I behaved that night with those boys. I had a wonderful time, but I did not expect to get pregnant. It did not even occur to me that I might. I just thought it was a bit of fun. Then I realised I was going to have a baby. Most girls are a lot more naive than they think they are at 17. At least they were in my day. And there was never any question about keeping Terence. I wanted him right from the start because I needed something for myself after the war. My dad was killed in the war, and so was my brother. It felt as if my family had been ripped apart, so Mum and my sister and I, we just got on with me being in the family way, and we brazened it out with the neighbours and the other family. Some people were very mean to us all and gossiped a lot about it. It was far from easy for any of us, but like I say, I was not the only girl who got herself in trouble, and there was a bit of forgiveness with that sort of thing in my community because times were what they were. The fuss died down eventually. Everyone had their own struggles and everyone dealt with them as best they could. I could not go to church anymore, but that didn't bother me. After I lost my dad and my brother and I saw what war did to other families too, I could never see how there could be a God, so I never missed going, and I never went since. But Terence helped us to feel like a family again, a little man in the family again, and we all loved him so much. I never had a second where I thought it were the wrong thing to do. After the war, attitudes changed a bit and women were freer to experiment. I am in my 90s now and probably will not see 100 before you get this letter, but I want you to know that I have no regrets about how Terence was conceived. I always saw him as a gift. My only regret was not telling him because he deserved to know. I have been a coward, but I have realised I have to stop being that to give you all a very important message. You have to be yourselves and not be sorry about it. Enjoy the things in your life that you want to do as long as that does not hurt someone else, and do not feel guilty about the things you want to do. It is important not to hurt people, or yourself if you can help it, but please do not let anyone tell you you can't go there or do this or be that. I wanted to be unrestrained at a time in life when it were frowned upon, but I haven't got many regrets and none at all about what I've told you or the fact that I've told you now. I have never wanted to die with regrets or wishing I'd done more or something different with my life. But not telling Terence is one regret I do have and I will have to take with me to the grave. I don't want you, any of you, to have regrets. Just live your best lives, please, and try not to judge me or anyone else too hard, because you will never truly know who anybody really is. It isn't right to make assumptions just because what they do is not what you would do, and vice versa. As you go through life, there'll be people who don't approve of you or like you, but you don't have to answer to them. People will always surprise you, and probably often in more bad ways than good. All you can do is be honest and be yourselves and let people make of it what they want. Respect your parents who try to do their best for you. Respect your children for their own opinions that might be different to yours. Respect authority even if you do not agree with it. And above all, respect yourselves. Do that first, and it will not matter if others don't. Know who you are and like yourselves and love yourselves too if you can. And if anything you're ever doing feels horrible or wrong, change it. I hope all this makes sense. I never did get to know who Michael or the other boys really were. Back in 1944, I was a good time girl, and they were good time boys. Some might say it were tragic. Others might say it was simple. It was always simple enough to me. And I'm sorry that there are no pointers for those of you who have descended from Terence, and I know that leaves you where you were, with some questions you can't answer. You're never going to know what health problems or family traits or other funny things you might expect to have from an unknown side to your family, and I'm sorry about that. I love you all so very much. I never want you to be disappointed in me, and I hope you're not, but if you do feel I have let you down, I'm sorry. All I can say is that I lived and loved in a different time, and perhaps I was not quite right for the time. But it was what it was, and here we all are. I just want you to know that if any of you don't feel quite right for your time either, you mustn't let that stop you from being who you really want to be. Be brave and be honest. Everything else will take care of itself. With lots of love, now and always, Joan. So there we have it, the letter from Joan Baxter to her family, and you can decide for yourselves whether or not she did the right thing by writing it. My friend, her grandson, thinks she did, and so do his two daughters. They're all grateful for a really profound and important part of their family history, but as he said to me, he knows there was probably a lot more that she could have said and shared, and it's frustrating that they all know so little. Joan must have had a lot of other thoughts and feelings about her life during and after the war, and in the decades beyond. He feels that she made a mistake in not saying more, but as I pointed out, that letter alone must have been tough for her to write. Maybe she couldn't have said any more after that. I do know she became ill not long after she wrote it, but she was in robust mental health right up until the end, so it wasn't a case of being incapable. My friend thinks, and I agree, that she either didn't think the rest of her story was interesting enough or she simply didn't have the courage to tell more of it. Either way, it's tragic. And lots of maybes for that family to be left with, but at least they have something concrete and meaningful that shows them a little of who their family matriarch Joan Baxter really was. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief glimpse into the world of a woman who lived through wartime and went on to build what she felt was a good life for herself and the family she went on to have and be a part of. I wish I could have met that lady because it sounds like she had a lot to say that people never got to hear. And that is so common, isn't it? Even my own grandmothers. I know so little compared with what I could know if they left the legacy of their stories. It's hard not to feel robbed. And none of us knows where our path in life will take us, but sometimes the value of the guidance from generations past can be so, so valuable, incalculable actually, in allowing us to maybe understand a little bit more about ourselves and other people in our family and how we view and fit into the world around us. Okay, I will talk to you soon.